The first thing I heard was her voice, sharp, clipped, and coated with entitlement. "Excuse me, are you with the staff?" The CEO's wife surveyed me from head to toe, her expression the same one someone might wear if they discovered a stain on their expensive gown. 3 executives beside her stifled their laughter behind crystal champagne flutes. My daughter Zoe, only 14, and standing proudly beside me because I wanted her to see what a professional corporate gala looked like, stiffened with embarrassment and anger. None of them, neither the executives nor Diane Ashworth, the CEO's impeccably styled wife, had the slightest clue who I really was. Not even her husband understood the full truth of my role. I was the founding partner. I owned 62% of Ashford Technologies. I personally appointed her husband as CEO. And yet, here I was, being mistaken for a server. The annual gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton, a tradition I had created 12 years ago when the company was nothing more than sketches and code scribbles in my tiny studio apartment. Now, Ashford Technologies was a global enterprise valued at over $300 million, spanning 6 countries with 700 employees depending on us. And the CEO's wife thought I'd come through the service entrance. I wore a simple black dress, elegant but modest. I'd never been interested in flashy displays of wealth. A neat bun, light makeup, and my mother's old pearl earrings were the only accessories I had bothered with. I suppose I looked like a woman who worked for a living. Which, frankly, I did. "I'm not with the catering company," I said, keeping my composure. Diane's eyebrow arched higher than the chandelier above us. "Then who exactly are you?" "This event is for executives, and it's invitation only." "I'm aware," I replied. "I curated the invitation list." Confusion swept briefly across her face, but she tried to maintain her composure. Before she could gather herself, Gregory, her husband and the CEO, walked up with a champagne flute in hand, mid-laugh from whatever conversation he had been entertaining. "Diane, darling, I see you've—" He froze, his eyes went wide, color drained from his face. "Ms. Monroe, I didn't realize you were attending this year." "I almost didn't," I said, "but I wanted my daughter to see what her mother built." I placed a gentle hand on Zoe's shoulder. She was trying so hard not to glare at Diane. Gregory swallowed hard. Diane looked between us, startled. "Your daughter?" she repeated, unsure how to recover. I'm sorry, I don't think we've met. I'm Diane Ashworth." "I know exactly who you are," I replied evenly. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. The executives who had snickered earlier were now studying their drinks as though they contained answers to the universe. "I was just telling your wife that I'm not here with the catering staff," I added lightly. "But I understand the assumption. Simple dress, no diamonds. I clearly don't blend into your definition of success." Gregory forced a strained laugh. "Ms. Monroe has a very dry sense of humor. She's actually—" "I'm leaving," I cut in. "Zoe has school tomorrow, and I believe we've witnessed enough." And with that, I guided my daughter toward the exit. Behind us, I heard Gregory hiss under his breath, "Do you have any idea who that was?" Whatever response Diane gave didn't matter. The damage was done. I was in my home office by 6 the next morning. The space wasn't grand, just a converted bedroom with a second-hand desk, 2 monitors, and a window overlooking a small backyard. Nothing about the room hinted at the wealth, influence, or responsibility it represented. I founded Ashford Technologies in 2012 using $50,000 I had scraped together after a decade of working as a software engineer. I wasn't interested in plastering my name on everything, so the company's name came from a random generator. I wanted the business to stand on its own merit, not on my ego. For the first 3 years, I was the company: engineering, finance, customer support, and on bad days, the janitor. When the company needed to grow, I brought in investors. I kept majority ownership but stepped back from daily management. I was gifted at building systems, but managing people was never my passion. So 5 years ago, I hired Gregory Ashworth. On paper, he was perfect. Wharton MBA, polished presentation skills, the charm investors adored. But charm doesn't build culture. Charm doesn't keep good employees. Charm doesn't prevent toxicity. And over the years, I'd begun to notice shifts. Women were leaving the company faster than men. Complaints were bubbling up. Productivity in certain teams had dropped. Gregory seemed more interested in high-profile events and photo opportunities than in day-to-day excellence. Last night's scene had simply clarified what I already suspected. I needed to step in. At 7 a.m., I sent an email to Gregory and the entire executive board. Emergency board meeting, 10 a.m. Mandatory attendance. Topic: Company culture and leadership review. E. Monroe, founding partner. My phone rang within minutes. Gregory. Eleanor, about last night. We'll address everything at 10, I said flatly. Diane didn't know who you were. It was an honest mistake. Was it? She saw a woman in a modest dress and decided I wasn't worthy of basic respect. That reflects on the environment we've allowed to flourish. She's not an employee. She doesn't represent the company. Her assumptions come from what she hears at home, I said. From the behavior she sees modeled. From what she believes is normal. Silence. See you at 10. I hung up. Zoe walked into the kitchen as I poured my coffee. Are you okay, Mom? I'm fine. That woman was awful. She looked at you like you were trash. Some people judge others based on appearances, I said. It says more about them than the person they're judging. But you own the company, she said indignantly. You could have told her. I wanted to see how she treated someone she thought had no power, I said softly. That's when you see the truth. Did she pass the test? She failed spectacularly. Zoe grinned faintly despite the frustration in her eyes. Are you going to fire her husband? That, I said, depends on this morning's meeting. The conference room felt unusually tense that morning. The long mahogany table, polished to perfection, normally hosted easy quarterly reviews and routine board approvals. Today, however, the air carried a heaviness that even the soft hum of the AC couldn't smooth over. 8 seats were filled. Myself, Gregory, 5 board members, and Sandra Wells, the head of HR who had warned me quietly over the years that something was fundamentally off with our internal culture. Gregory had positioned himself at the head of the table, a habit he'd adopted the moment he'd become CEO, even though the seat technically belonged to the board chair. I chose the seat at the opposite end, deliberately reminding him that his authority had limits. Thank you for coming on such short notice, I began. We need to address concerns about the culture within Ashford Technologies. Gregory jumped in immediately. Is this about the gala? Because I've already spoken to Diane. It's not just about the gala, I said evenly. Sandra, please share the retention numbers. Sandra opened her laptop with the poise of someone who had been waiting far too long for the opportunity to present the truth. Over the last 3 years, she began, female employee turnover has risen by 47%. Exit interviews cite hostile environments, inconsistent leadership, and limited advancement opportunities. Those are subjective opinions, Gregory said dismissively. People leave companies for dozens of reasons. Sandra didn't flinch. 63% of departing women specifically mentioned interactions with senior leadership. Which could mean anything, Gregory said, his voice tightening. Miscommunication, personality conflicts. Or systemic problems, I interjected. Let's not dismiss patterns. Gregory leaned back with a scoff. This is starting to feel like a witch hunt. It isn't, I said calmly. It's data. Sandra continued. In the past 18 months, we've received 14 formal complaints regarding inappropriate remarks. 3 involved executives. None resulted in disciplinary action. We followed protocol, Gregory snapped. Every complaint was investigated. Yes, I said, opening a folder of my own. And nearly all were closed with responses that blamed the complainant or labeled concerns as misunderstandings. Several board members shifted. The truth was uncomfortable, but the evidence was undeniable. I've dedicated 12 years to building Ashford Technologies, I said. And I've stayed in the background because I believed the work should speak for itself. But stepping back has allowed a culture to grow where dismissiveness goes unchecked. What do you propose? Asked Harold, the oldest board member, and the one who rarely asked questions. A full culture audit by an outside firm, I replied. Mandatory leadership training for all executives, independence in our complaint investigations, and regular, transparent reporting to the board. That could take months, Gregory said, trying to regain footing, and cost more than it's worth. We made $47 million in profit last year, I replied. We can afford to invest in basic respect. This is an overreaction, he said. You're a silent partner. Governance is a board matter. Operational decisions fall under my authority. Gregory, I said quietly, I'm the majority owner. The room stilled. And I've been silent long enough. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The power dynamic he had grown comfortable with was shifting rapidly beneath him. There's another concern, I added. Last night, your wife looked at me, someone who built this company, and assumed I didn't belong. When I corrected her, she demanded to know who I was. That's not fair, he said. Diane didn't mean. Her assumptions come from the environment she sees at home, I said. From your language. From your jokes about diversity hires and political correctness. From the dismissive attitude you've modeled. That's ridiculous, he snapped. You're blowing one comment out of proportion. I'm basing this on 3 years of data, I said. 14 ignored complaints, nearly 50% turnover among women, and the look on my 14-year-old daughter's face when she watched your wife humiliate me. That last line was a blow he wasn't prepared for. The board members exchanged glances. Zoe asked me this morning, I said, if I planned to fire you. I told her that depended on this conversation. Gregory's face flinched, hurt, anger, and fear flickering all at once. So let me ask you directly, I said. Are you willing to accept accountability for the environment that has developed under your leadership? Are you willing to change? He stared at me for a long moment. The silence stretched, filling every corner of the room. And if I say no? He asked finally. Then we'll negotiate your exit package, I replied. Another quiet moment passed. Then Gregory relaxed back in his chair, not defiant this time, but resigned. What does accountability look like? He asked. We spent the next 3 hours building a detailed framework, an independent culture audit, executive coaching for all senior leaders, overhauled complaint procedures handled externally, quarterly evaluations tied directly to leadership performance. Gregory kept as CEO, but on a probationary basis with measurable goals. He didn't like any of it, but he accepted it. When the meeting adjourned, the board members left quickly, still digesting the shift in power dynamics. Sandra lingered behind. Thank you, she said softly. I've been documenting issues for 2 years. Nobody wanted to stir the water. I should have intervened sooner, I admitted. You're doing it now, she said. That matters. That evening, Zoe and I sat in our favorite booth at the pizza place down the street, her reward after the emotionally intense week. Did you fire him? She asked around a mouthful of cheese. Not yet, I said with a smile. He's getting one chance to do better. Do you think he will? I think people change when they realize the consequences of not changing, I said. We'll see. She toyed with her straw. Mom, that lady called you the help. Like being someone who serves people is something to be ashamed of. There's nothing wrong with honest work, I said. Your grandmother cleaned houses her whole life. Her hard work paid for my education. So why did it hurt then? Zoe asked. I paused, appreciating her thoughtful question. Because she wasn't judging the job, I said softly. She was deciding I was worth less than her, and that kind of judgment always stings. Zoe reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're worth more than all of them. I smiled. I'm just someone who works hard, and I won't let anyone make me feel small for that. Especially women with scary eyebrows, she muttered. I burst out laughing. 6 months passed, 6 long, transformative months for Ashford Technologies. The culture audit had been completed by an outside consulting firm with an almost intimidating level of thoroughness. They interviewed employees at every level, reviewed complaint records, analyzed communication patterns, and held focus groups that dragged uncomfortable truths out into the open. The findings weren't flattering, but they were honest. More importantly, they were actionable. The company was evolving. Training sessions were no longer optional. Leadership meetings had shifted from surface-level optics to genuine conversations about inclusion, workplace dynamics, and accountability. The HR department was finally given authority instead of being treated as an administrative formality. And Gregory, who had once been allergic to self-reflection, was actually making an effort. He still carried a hint of reluctance during coaching sessions, but he had stopped dismissing concerns outright. And while his transformation was far from perfect, it was visible. He listened more. He interrupted less. He made space for voices he used to tune out. Progress, I reminded myself, wasn't about instant perfection. It was about consistent effort. But the most noticeable shift wasn't in him. It was in the employees. They walked the halls with less tension. Conversations felt freer. Anonymous feedback reports showed genuine improvement in morale and trust. For the first time in years, I felt something like hope. As the next annual gala approached, I debated whether to attend at all. Last year's humiliation still lingered. Not because of what had been said to me, but because of what it revealed. But Zoe insisted. "We're going," she declared one evening. "You can't teach people to change and then hide. Besides, I want to see if that lady tries to be nice this time." I laughed despite myself. "All right, but we're keeping expectations realistic." On the evening of the event, Zoe entered my room wearing a dress she had picked out herself, a simple black one that mirrored mine from last year. "We matched today," she said proudly. Seeing her confidence, her unwavering loyalty, filled me with warmth. We arrived at the Ritz-Carlton to the same polished marble floors, same glittering chandeliers, and same clusters of executives eager to impress one another. But the energy felt different somehow, less elitist, more grounded. As we moved through the crowd, conversations quieted for a moment. People recognized me now, not as some mysterious background investor, but as the founder who had refused to let the company slide into toxicity. Then I saw Diane Ashworth. She stood near the entrance, scanning the room nervously, as though searching for someone she owed something to, because she did. When she noticed us, she froze. A beat later, she approached with hesitant steps, her posture strangely modest for a woman who had once wielded her social status like a weapon. "Ms. Monroe," she began, stopping just a few feet away. "Do you have a moment?" I nodded. "Of course." She inhaled sharply. "I owe you an apology." "You do," I said without softening the blow. She swallowed. "I spoke to you last year in a manner that was disrespectful and ignorant. I made assumptions that were wrong, and I behaved in a way I'm not proud of." Her voice wavered, and for the first time since I'd met her, she seemed human, fallible, embarrassed, and genuinely remorseful. "I'm sorry," she finished quietly. "It was inexcusable," I said, "but I accept your apology." She looked relieved, but unsure how to proceed. I gestured toward Zoe. "This is my daughter. She's the reason I pushed so hard for cultural reform. I want her to grow up in a world where women are judged for their integrity, not their wardrobe." Diane looked at Zoe with a softened expression. "That's a beautiful goal." "We think so," I replied. After a moment of awkwardness, she excused herself and vanished into the crowd. Zoe watched her go, folding her arms. "That was weird." "Growth usually is," I said. "Do you think she meant it?" she asked. "I think she meant it today," I said honestly. "But apologies only matter if the actions after them change. Time will tell." She nodded thoughtfully. We continued walking through the ballroom, greeting employees and board members. Several approached to thank me quietly for initiating the culture overhaul. A few even admitted they hadn't realized how bad things had become until the audit revealed it in black and white. It struck me then, change wasn't a single event. It was a series of decisions, hard ones, uncomfortable ones, made by people who cared enough to improve. Later that evening, as the music played softly and people mingled, Zoe tugged at my hand. "Mom?" "Yes?" "I've been thinking about what she called you last year." I smiled wryly. "The help?" She nodded. "But isn't that what we all are? I mean, we help people. You help run a company. People help customers. Employees help each other. The world works because people help." I stared at her for a moment, taken aback by how something so simple could be so profound. "You're right," I murmured. "Being the help isn't an insult. It's what keeps everything running." Zoe shrugged. Then she wasn't wrong. I laughed, the sound surprising even myself. "No, sweetheart, not wrong at all. Just wrong about what it meant." We stood there, mother and daughter, surveying the company I had built from a cramped apartment and a dream. A company that was finally learning to value people instead of appearances. A company that was beginning to reflect the principles I had lived by all my life. Integrity, respect, accountability. These weren't corporate buzzwords. They were the foundation of everything worth building. Zoe leaned her head against my shoulder. "You're doing a good job, you know." "Am I?" I asked softly. She nodded. "We both are." I squeezed her hand, my heart unexpectedly full. "I suppose we are," I said. "And we're not done yet. Not by a long shot." The ballroom sparkled around us, but my focus was on her. The future. The reason I fought so hard for change. The reason I refused to be silent when it mattered. We were the help, yes. But help is what transforms companies. Help is what changes cultures. Help is what shapes better futures. And I plan to keep helping. Every step of the way.